everyone, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy this webinar. You're going to be blessed. You're going to learn so much from two world-class doctors that Dr. Imani is going to talk to you about right now. And we'll start with Dr. Dylan Joseph.
Yes, yeah, Obi, thanks very much. Imani, thank you very, very much for the introduction. It's a privilege to be here and an honor to be able to share thoughts. And Rifay, also lovely to meet you, a privilege. I think, Imani, you've hit the nail right on the head. I think, you know, ophthalmology, optometry, well, medicine in general is seen on a global platform as either European or American. And I think Africa as a continent has some of the world-leading technology and medical facilities and you know, state-of-the-art work that the continent can offer. So it's by no means behind the rest of the world. I think on the contrary, we're on par with the rest of Europe and America, if not in some spheres ahead of the game. But great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Dylan. Just the wealth of the pathologies that we have here and the determination of our doctors to do their best in order to provide the excellent eye care for their patients is just wonderful. It's so lovely to have you here today. So thank you for accepting the invitation today. We have Dr. Dylan Joseph from South Africa. Dr. Joseph trained in Pretoria for his undergrad and then in University of Bloemfontein. I hope I'm saying it correctly.
That's good. That's good.
Perfect. And then Dr. Dylan went to do a fellowship with Dr. Arthur Cumming in Dublin, Ireland, before he started his world-class practice where he practices refractive surgery for the last decade. So thank you very much for accepting the invitation, Dr. Dylan. Now, on the other part of the continent, all the way to the north, we are very glad to have Dr. Yasser Rifai with us. Dr. Rifai trained in the University Mohammed Al-Khamis of Rabat for his medicine and residency of ophthalmology. He has been practicing refractive surgery in his world-class practice in Rabat, actually in the heart of Rabat, which is the capital of Morocco, for the last 8 years. We are so happy to have you here, Dr. Yasser. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Hello, thank you, Iman. Thank you, all of you. Thank you for this invitation. I'm very glad to be between you and to speak about refractive surgery and the keratoconus, the field I love in this specialty, which is ophthalmology.
Wow. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think the best way to start, and I'm sorry if I interrupted you, Obi, but you can go ahead. All right. So the first thing that everyone is wondering, what made you doctors go into refractive surgery? And I'll start with Dr. Dylan for that one.
Yeah. So refractive surgery specifically, I'll just jump back to ophthalmology, I suppose. Ophthalmology initially was a beautiful balance between clinical and surgical medicine. And, you know, the more I got into ophthalmology and then specifically refractive surgery, the more you realize how you can actually, through changing vision, change people's lives. Wow. And change their quality of life. And that for me was an I mean, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it now. That was a slam dunk for me, knowing that through refractive surgery, be it cataract surgery, refractive cataract surgery, laser vision correction, etc., that you can change someone's life for the better. They, you know, for me, there's no better privilege and no better work satisfaction.
Wow, you know, Dr. Dylan, I don't know if you still remember, but when you were finishing off at University of the Free State, I was doing my first year optometry school. And one thing that literally used to stand out the most about you is you always stayed behind. You always stayed behind to ask the ophthalmologists who were there more questions. You were always available to talk to the young optometrists like myself who were coming into the industry. And so when I look at your journey, wow, I'm super, super inspired and impressed by how far you have come. And I'm sure we're going to get into that as the webinar continues. But Dr. Rifai, how about you? How did you get into refractive surgery?
So in the beginning of my residency, I was I focused on retinal surgery. So I started to do retinal surgery, but after 2 3 years, results was not as good as I want. I'm the kind of people that want to see the results of my work.
Wow.
So when you do vitrectomy, when you do, you can help people, but uh, the results was not as good as I wanted. So I switched. I started to do some cases of refractive surgery without being an expert. So I was helped by a friend, which is Dr. Mohammed Chehbi from Casablanca. So I started with him, and then after some cases, so I feel the difference between these two fields, and we cannot do all ophthalmology. So I should choose one thing, and I choose the results.
Wow.
I choose phaco refractive surgery, and then when you do refractive surgery, you read about, and you you read about topography, and then I start to learn topography more and more. And when you know topography, you can take keratoconus, you can work keratoconus, and then I started to do keratoconus and refractive surgery, and I stopped retinal surgery, and now I'm very happy with this choice. After now, I do refractive and keratoconus 8 years, for 8 years, and I'm very happy. And if I should do it, I would do it again from the beginning.
That's how you know you made the right choice.
I just want to add a point to that, which I think is really great. I think refractive surgery is a combination between art and science.
Wow.
And ophthalmologists are particular about detail and numbers. And refractive surgery is about refining nomograms. It's about working on your data, working on your outcomes, and perfecting it. Where Yasser's 100% right. You can get an anatomical fixation of the retina, but visually, it's a disappointment.
Yeah.
I think it's a great explanation. And I think that's also a big drive behind it. You've got art and you've got science, and you want that visual perfection. And that's what makes us tick.
Absolutely. Yes, I think that it's a big part of ophthalmology that actually draws a lot of surgeons to go for it because the results are almost immediately there, and it's very much rewarding. I must add, though, that Dr. Yasser is very much known for his passion to teaching, because mind you, in Morocco, we do not have the system of fellowships. It's a little bit different. So our residency takes longer, but there are no fellowships. And so refractive surgery remains something that's very much mysterious to residents. But Dr. Yasser has been making tremendous effort in the last years, holding roundtables to introduce residents and even med students and interns to refractive surgery in a wonderful way. So we're very thankful for that, Dr. Yasser. And so the next question will be for you, Dr. Dillon. I went through the website and read a lot about you on Refractive Surgery Alliance as to how you went from doing your fellowship in Ireland to bring all the technology and the advancement to your practice in South Africa. So how do you feel that your practice evolved over the last years?
Yeah. So from 2012, that's when I started private practice. I was focused on general ophthalmology and a lot like Yasser in the beginning on retina. And I got a fantastic opportunity from a mentor in Bloemfontein who actually brought a refractive suite, can you believe it, down to Knysna. He set it up, he brought pig eyes, he brought the keratomes, because as you were saying, we, unlike Northern Africa, it's something that we can learn, I think, from our colleagues, is as postgraduates, we don't get exposure to refractive surgery or much at all. So we start learning about that in private practice, which is, not the right time to be learning refractive surgery. But this mentor of mine was amazing, and he developed my passion and interest for the refractive surgery. But I was always, looking at topography scans and tomography, which was sort of a newish concept to me, and I wasn't confident enough. So I thought, well, you can't be dabbling in refractive surgery. It's like you can't dabble in retina either, or glaucoma. Yeah. And that's when I decided, look, I had an opportunity to go and work abroad and study for an additional 2 years. And in those 2 years, completely immersed myself in refractive surgery, ICLs, we didn't do any retinal surgery, no glaucoma surgery, etc. It was a purely refractive fellowship. And I think having come back to South Africa with that experience, it has opened a whole new arena for me. I now, you develop that confidence to be able to handle the refractive cases alone. Your colleagues know that you're also doing purely refractive surgery. So they tend to send you the difficult cases or the redos or the therapeutic cases. And, from that perspective, that evolution of my practice has driven it purely to refractive in South Africa. So generally in South Africa, most ophthalmologists practice as general ophthalmologists.
Ah.
But once again, I agree with Yasser. You've got to refine your speciality. We can't be a jack of all trades. And that was why I said, well, you know what, I do 12, 15 procedures, and that's all I do. But I want to do that to the absolute best of my ability and at a world-class standard. And then by doing that, it's amazing how through your connections, your optometric and ophthalmologic connections, and the public awareness, how your surgery practice grows. And refractive surgery, by and large, is a word of mouth practice. I mean, you've got to invest in advertising, which we'll talk about later. It's very important. You've got to have a good referral basis, and you've got to get the results. If you don't get the results as a refractive surgeon, you're not going to get very far. But I think that's been the evolution, and it's great that I'm at the point where I can feel comfortable just saying these are the only procedures I do, and I do that as best I can. So there has been a good evolution from beginning general ophthalmology through the fellowship right through to focused refractive medicine.
Wow, Dr. Dillon, that is absolutely incredible. Like that journey that you have gone through, and like you're saying, selecting to focus on one particular area where you will be like a specialist in, and you know that people will come and travel from all over the continent or all over the country to your specific practice. Now, Dr. Rifay, I would ask you the same question, but in a different way. I would rather put it to you this way. How has the pandemic, because you both have world-class practices, right? So how has the pandemic over the past year affected your practice as a specialist? Because the generalist, when a pandemic hits, I'm assuming that they're like a jack of all trades, they're doing a little bit of everything. So in your case, focusing on a particular area in your practice, how did the pandemic affect you, Dr. Rifay?
So in the beginning of the pandemic, on March, April, May, it was a little bit difficult because we stopped working. We were all afraid about the corona, and we received only 2, 3, 4 people per day. But I think from June, the work became normal. And my subspecialty, refractive and keratoconus, there is absolutely no problem with the pandemic. The work is getting better and better. That's why I moved from my old office to a new big center. So the activity was not disturbed by the pandemic.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. And Dr. Dillon, in your case, did you have to adjust something in the past year that you have always been doing in your business that has affected your business in a big way as a result of you changing those things?
So actually, on the contrary, by not changing what I do, it hadn't affected, obviously the hard lockdown affected everyone, but we might touch on it later, but the reimbursement models in ophthalmology, well, in South Africa, and Yasser help me out if it's similar in North Africa, but we've got medical aid practices and private practices. Medical aid run practices can only survive basically in 2 ways: by seeing volume or over-servicing patients, or a combination of both. So from the beginning, from the outset, I ran a private practice. I dedicate 2.5 hours of my time for a refractive workup. They see me, they see the technicians, from the front through to right to the start to the finish. they're there. So I see fewer volumes of patients, but they copay on top of that. So those patients through the pandemic were still willing to come in, whereas I think the practices that bill a medical aid rate are dependent on high volume, and when those volumes tailed off and crashed, those practices are the ones that now are under financial constraints and stress. There have been nuances in the practice that are through the Refractive Surgery Alliance and many of the webinars that I've attended, really sort of gave me insight into streaming my whole process, patient examination, showing them videos, actually getting them to understand their eye's anatomy from the back to the front before we start talking about refractive surgery. And it's about the patient experience at the end of the day. So that's what I've really tried to tweak in the last year and a half, is making it a premium experience for patients from start to finish. And then they're more prepared to say, right, well, I'm walking out of here, I know exactly what my options are. It's going to cost me more than the medical aid rate. And yes, I'm not seeing as many patients as a medical aid rate practice, but I think that has been a key to maintaining stability throughout this pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. A proper education of patients in these times has played a tremendous role. And I personally believe that it leaves quite a wide margin for all kinds of technology, honestly, artificial intelligence, all kinds of platforms to practice telemedicine. I think this was a kind of an opportunity in disguise for us as ophthalmologists to explore all these platforms. That's wonderful to look at the past and to learn from it, but it's also very much exciting to look forward to the future. And I would like to ask Dr. Yasser Rifai, what is the thing that you are most excited about when it comes to refractive surgery currently?
So I think that refractive surgery is evolving very fast, and what my pleasure now is to do like refractive surgery for keratoconus. So treating high order aberrations is now for me a challenge, and I do a lot of surface ablations, rings, and I feel it's like refractive surgery because I'm helping patients with this difficult illness to get better. So I'm excited more in treating keratoconus, doing refractive procedures to the keratoconus than classical procedures for ametropia. So this is what I feel, and I'm trying to get better results in treating high aberrations in keratoconus.
Wow, Dr. Rifay, that's very, very interesting. Do you find that optometrists are able to play a big role in regards keratoconus management? Or how is the current setup between you as an ophthalmologist and optometrist in Morocco at the current moment?
So in the current moments in Morocco, we have not optometrists. In Morocco, we have ophthalmologists and we have orthoptists. So it's another way. It's different.
Wow, wow, that is very, very interesting. And Dr. Joseph, in your case, I mean, obviously your practice has evolved over the years. I know one of the things that you do a lot in your practice, for example, is LASIK, whereas Dr. Rifay does keratoconus. I mean, over the years, people have always seen LASIK as a cosmetic thing. In your practice, what are some of the changes to the procedures of LASIK or refractive surgery, if I can put it that way, that you have started implementing in your business? And like, what are some of the things that you have done in that regard?
Yeah, I think Obi, the biggest percentage of people I think that see LASIK as are you there? As cosmetic are the medical aids, the funders, and that's why they don't pay for it. And I think if you think back to 30 years ago in South Africa, when medical aids were funding laser, there was a massive boom or a massive increase in LASIK numbers. I mean, some of the surgeons, Giel Kritzinger was doing 30 LASIKs a day. I mean, yeah, from then, 30 years ago to now, I mean, the technology has evolved significantly. We've now understanding tomography better. Epithelial mapping is a huge additional insight into understanding our borderline cases and whether we can consider a LASIK or rather a surface treatment or go ICL with these cases. The addition of femtosecond technology as well has, depending on the astigmatism, the hyperopic ablation, and the magnitude, how much treatment we're doing, we can adjust the depth of the flaps. But I think one thing that we still need to do is, I think, public awareness, and perhaps there is still a certain divide between ophthalmology and optometry, which I would love to try and bridge. And, we're trying to do a whole series of webinars to say, look, LASIK surgeons who are doing LASIK the whole time, or laser vision correction, those are the ones that should be doing those cases, because they're going to look at the post-operative issues. Are there flap folds or striae? Are there dry eyes? People, I suppose, if you haven't done enough of those volumes, those cases end up at the optometrists, and that gives LASIK a bad name, because a lot of the ophthalmologists then say, well, they're not going to handle the issue, or the dry eye, or even an enhancement, lifting a flap and doing a touch-up at 2 or 5 years down the line. So we've got to also educate the public, say, look, you've got options. We've got to be aware that, that's with you and with your quality of vision, and has that improved your quality of life? And then we've done a good job. So yeah, I've gone from keratomes to femtosecond. That's been the biggest evolution in the practice, but and the change in the excimer laser technology as well.
Now, with regards to that, as these procedures are evolving, how are you dealing with the misconceptions about refractive surgery that patients might have?
Well, I think that's going to take time. I mean, in Europe, laser vision correction is a household name, and if you look at the Refractive Surgery Alliance and the likes of Guy Kazarian, who heads it, I mean, he's got a passion and a drive. He considers refractive errors as congenital disorders, and believes that as a Refractive Surgery Alliance, we should be there to create the public awareness that this is a treatable error, that as we can get the patient to ocular maturity, and absolutely through contact lenses, spectacles, and then at ocular maturity, we should say, listen, right, we've got a whole a bunch of options. We've got contacts, we've got specs, we've got laser vision correction, we've got ICLs. So I think from ophthalmology and optometry's perspective, it's up to us as a community of two disciplines to work together to say, listen, here are your options. And I agree with you, not everyone is a good candidate for a laser vision correction procedure, and not everyone wants laser. So, and a lot of people are happy being in specs or contacts. And so just as long as we give the options and we create the public awareness, and that comes to marketing and education. If you look at the numbers, you've got to be spending probably 20 to 30% as a refractive surgeon of your turnover on active marketing and patient awareness to bring those people into your practice. And that's a critical area where we fall short. Ophthalmologists don't invest into marketing, but we also don't invest enough time spending it with optometry to say, listen, guys, let's make people aware. Let's put all the options on the table.
Yes, that will be a great channel actually to educate patients in a more efficient way. And I believe that the goal from the Refractive Surgery Alliance is absolutely excellent. But then again, it really depends on each country and the culture that comes with the country in order to use different methods to spread the word about refractive surgery and all the available treatments. But in the meantime, we still have patients coming in with completely different misconceptions when it comes to refractive surgery. I believe things differ from a country to the other, and you probably have experienced this, Dr. Joseph, with patients when you came back from Ireland to South Africa. I can tell you a little anecdote. When I was doing my residency and recruiting patients for cataract surgery, I actually more than once had patients refusing to be implanted with intraocular lenses because they thought they were not going to be going to heaven if they die with a foreign
Wow.
body in their eyes. And I
Goodness
suppose
me.
there are many other stories like that as well in
Yeah.
other places.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's got a lot to do, Iman, with risk. Sorry, not risk, with understanding myths.
Yes,
And
yeah.
there's a whole bunch. There's a list of like 20 myths that one can go through. That's a talk for another time. But I
Yeah.
mean,
Absolutely.
it's those myths are really important. I mean, some of them that you can't do enhancements, that you can't treat presbyopia, that you can't treat hyperopia or astigmatism, or that you have to have stability and refraction. There's a lot of those that, or public misconceptions that they say, well, you know, I can't have LASIK, or I can't have laser vision correction. I'm going to have to wait another 5 years. And then they're presbyopic, and now you've got to show them blended vision. And that's
Yeah.
then a little more of a tricky solution to work with in getting a satisfied customer. But by and large, if you even with the presbyopes, you can still end up with fantastic results.
Wow.
Yes, and so I wanted to ask Dr. Rifai as well, because we are from the same country. I am kind of familiar to all the misconceptions, and they are just, it's as you said, for another talk, definitely. But just wanted to get a little tips from you of how you conduct with your patients when they come in with all these misconceptions.
So in my way to work, I do some information on internet. So the little bit marketing about refractive surgery. So I want to break this misconception, to show the reality of the refractive surgery, and do not show only the positive phase of refractive surgery, but also I show complications. I show all what happens in the OR. So we have to give the real information to people, because there are a lot of people that want refractive surgery, but there are a lot of misconceptions from other doctors, from other people that say it's not working, there is complications, it's not as they say. So but when people comes to my office, I'm a little bit hard with them. I prepare the post-operative post-operative time. It means when I'm speaking to a patient that tell me I want to do refractive surgery, I explain to him. I give him a video. I show him with the video all the information about the surgery that you will do. For example, I will implant ICL. I will give him a video done by myself for 20 minutes. And in this video, all the procedure is explained, and also the complications. And I say also in a small percentage, you can have a very serious complications. And I see after the patient after this, and if the patient is not motivated, I avoid to touch him.
Okay.
So I take only the patients that are motivated. When they are afraid, I make them afraid more, because I know if there is a complication, I will be afraid. So all my patients, they have to really be very motivated. And when I have a complication, last 3 weeks before, I had a serious complication. So the patient was very calm, because he signed all the papers. He was aware about all the complications. So now it's going very good. And patients that are motivated, even if you tell him there is complications, they will do the surgery. So it's like air crash. When we see air crash, the videos of air crash, we do not avoid to take the plane. So it's the same thing. And when sometimes the patients start to tell me these misconceptions, so I stop them. I tell them, you are not convinced. Change. You go to home and then when you are convinced, you can come back. This is my way.
Wow, you know, you made me realize something, and we do this a lot, Dr. Rifay, in our workshops. We say that our role as healthcare professionals, for that matter, is we need to communicate with patients in the following manner, I believe, that patients are always thinking, what will they gain if they go with what you're recommending versus what will they be losing if they go without? And so if you don't tell them the pros and cons in detail from the start to the post-refractive surgery procedures that you do, you're going to actually lose that patient, and they're going to go back into their communities without an understanding of what it is that they were being operated on and how it's going to impact their day-to-day living. So what you were saying is very, very important. And now, I mean, and what makes me think of another question would be for you, Dr. Joseph, is that years ago, we were always managing your standardized eye problems, myopia, for example. But over the years, technology has improved whereby we are able to manage the astigmatic patient, the presbyopic patient. How is that going with regards to the challenges that poses when medical aids are not paying for procedures and patients having to, where you have to mitigate the risks, as Dr. Rifay was talking about, after the operation, that what are the guarantees that you are giving patients with these more complicated eye problems that they might have?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it's got to do with your watching your results and your nomograms, and whether you've got myopic astigmatism, mixed astigmatism, hyperopia. If you've got really tight nomograms, you've got a good idea of what your outcomes are going to be, and you can also educate. And that's the point. You have to consent the patient yourself as the physician. I agree with you, Yasser. You can't get a technician to do it. You have to walk the journey with the patient, and they know, have you got a 5, a 10, or 20% possibility of an enhancement over the next 2 years or lifetime? Through the pandemic, we have sort of run special sort of laser, what we call them, lockdown lasik offers, to encourage the people to come in. But at the end of the day, I think you've just got to be, aware of your own results, understand your technology and your capabilities, consent the patients, and you're going to, even in that post-operative period, if you have those difficult patients or you need to do enhancements, they understand that, they consented for it, and that should not be a problem then. So I think, education and consent is, and watching your results, and then also, patient awareness campaigns is really important. But in terms of the medical aids, just getting back to that, and insurance companies now, there are a number of financing houses that can assist with your payment plans. So they'll do a quick background check within 24 to 48 hours, and they can approve the vision correction procedure for the patient. And then to answer the second part of your question, how do I look after these patients? At the moment, and I got this from my days at the Wellington Eye Clinic, they are so confident and of their post-operative results, and having done 40,000 procedures in that Wellington Eye Clinic, mostly Arthur Cummings, that they give a lifetime warranty on their vision correction procedures. So if you need an enhancement back to original target, they will do an enhancement at no additional cost to the patient, which is what we do in our clinic as well. So if in 5 years you drift and you're again a -1 or you go to +1, if it's within 2 years, I lift the flap, otherwise I'll do a surface procedure on top of that. But we then take that patient back to the original target. So it's about trusting in your outcomes, trusting in your technology, and that instills patient trust, because the patient will then say, oh, gee whiz, okay, well, I know that if I've got a 5 or 10% chance of an enhancement in 5 years' time, the doctor will sort me out, and I don't need to worry about that.
Yes, having such a financial reassuring plan must absolutely help a lot in making that decision.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
Dr. Dillon, you talked about something very important, which is knowing your own results. And in that regards, I would like to ask you if you both of you doctors are running very, very successful and busy refractive surgery practices. And in that regard, do you ever conduct clinical research in your practice?
Um, Absolutely. So I think the beauty of watching your nomograms for both cataract and refractive surgery or laser vision correction surgery is that it graphs everything for you. And not only that, you start watching your own personalized constants. You look at your surgical induced astigmatisms, and you will see the global reference database for your laser outcomes versus your personalized database. So it will also tell you how close you are to the global reference and what are your visual outcomes. And sort of if you've got that inquiring mind, you have to as a refractive surgeon. And if you speak to Arthur Cummings, and he wrote it on an RSA post yesterday, he says, if you're a refractive surgeon, you have to be watching your outcomes. I think that stimulates the trigger. And fortunately, I work in a clinic with a PhD ophthalmic technician who's just a very stimulated person. So she's always keen on research. And we then when the iHance IOL was launched last year, we got together 200 eyes, and then all you then do, if you've got the machine to do it, the software engine, punch in your pre-op post-op data and it'll graph it all for you, and you can see exactly what your results are. And then it makes it easy to research that, watch the outcomes, and for presentations, if you enjoy doing that, it makes it very easy. But yeah, you've got to have the software platform to watch your results.
Yes, it must absolutely help a lot. Dr. Rifai, what about you? You definitely have a big volume of patients. I know for a fact that it takes quite a time for people to get an appointment with you. And so, there are a lot of advantages to that, which is clinical research. And how do you conduct that in your own practice?
Yes, so in my own practice, I have orthoptists. So orthoptists, they are helping me in the work, but they are also helping me in research. So I'm doing some research about topography, and now I'm conducting. I finished a study, and now it's under publication. The comparison between Pentacam and M39 in the detection of early keratoconus. I'm now working on detection of keratoconus by epithelial mapping before changes in the posterior surface in Pentacam. So I have a lot of cases of early keratoconus with normal posterior elevation in Pentacam. I did research about my cases of intracorneal rings. So I'm doing my own nomogram to adapting my own nomogram in intracorneal rings. I'm using some other parameters like calculating the axial length. That helps me in the programmation of the intracorneal rings. I did also some research about cross-linking because I have a high volume of cross-linking. So I do research more in keratoconus than refractive surgery. But we will try. We are a little bit busy, but we will try in the few months to do more statistical research about our cases in refractive surgery.
So both technology and human resources are definitely important to conduct
Yes.
Research in a busy practice. Thank you for your points, doctors.
Wow, that was actually amazing. And one thing that both of you keep making reference to is the aspect of educating patients, communicating with them in terms of what is required of them and what is expected of them throughout the whole process. Then that obviously involves you guys being able to be accessible on digital platforms, on social media. And so marketing now comes into play. And a lot of ophthalmologists tend to, or a lot of healthcare people, if I can put it that way, they tend to focus on their craft and neglect that aspect of marketing. You, Dr. Joseph, how have you utilized marketing within your practice? And what are some of the challenges from a legal point of view that you have had to consider in terms of what you do on Facebook, what you do on Instagram, what you do on LinkedIn, and how do you separate that from your own personal brand? Because both of you, I've noticed when we were doing research for today, you are literally both invested in ensuring that you are communicating the services that you are rendering to patients while educating them. How are you utilizing digital platforms in your practices, Dr. Joseph?
So, yeah, it was 8 years ago, it was just, your Google website, and that was pretty much it. Moving to Europe, Europe is very aggressive with marketing refractive surgery in a digital space as well. And you sort of get used to that sort of approach. And it's when you're immersed in that for 2 years, you come back to South Africa as well. And that touches on the point that from a legal aspect, in terms of touting and canvassing, yeah, one has to be very careful. And, I myself have been in the situation where on one or two of the posts and comments, it's transgressed. And so you've got to look at it and say, well, you've got to understand the law first. And once you do that and you're educating patients and not offering a service then outside what your profession is, you've got, your website, you've got the Google adverts, you've got Facebook and Instagram. I've got a web development team that is constantly doing search engine optimization. They design Facebook ads, which they also put out in the Google space. They post and collect leads for me. And basically, once the leads are collected, they're filtered into the practice. And then you have someone who takes those leads data's shown that within 5 or 20 minutes, if you're not getting onto those leads, you're going to lose them. They want a response now. So I think that is really important. And what has changed for me through the COVID pandemic is in those 3 months of hard lockdown, what I'd started doing through a platform called Calendly, which is really cool, is once the leads are generated, I had an email that says, if you'd like to learn more about laser vision correction or refractive surgery, please choose a date and a time where I can have a Zoom conference with you. I will share my digital software, which goes through 3D animated videos. I will just get an idea of you being presbyopic or myopic or astigmatic. If you're 60 or 65, I know we're going lens route anyway, so I'll show them lens videos. I still don't know, also from a legal perspective, what do their optics look like? What is their cornea, their tear film, what their lens looks like, their retina? But I'll give them a broad overview and say, listen, these are your potential options. And when they've developed that personal rapport and relationship with you, they are far more confident to say, gee whiz, you know what, that guy's down in Knysna, geez, he's 1,000 Ks away, but he's taken 20 minutes of his time to sit and talk to me about my potential options. I'm gonna go and see him. And so through that hard lockdown, I was doing 4, 5, 6 virtual consults a day, just on patient education, really, that's all it was. And did we convert all of those leads? No. But at the end of the day, you're educating. And if the tide rises, all boats rise. So if that patient then sitting in Cape Town or in Johannesburg or 300 Ks away that you're doing a Zoom consult with decides in 3 months' time they want to do refractive surgery, but they don't want to travel here, they're going to go to my colleague in Johannesburg or in Pretoria, and refractive surgery benefits, ophthalmology benefits. And I think that's also an important take-home message. If you're advertising to try and lift everyone's practice at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I mean, that is all about building your credibility, but gaining the patient's trust. And the quickest way to gain the patient's trust is by showing them what they're going to experience when they're dealing with you. And if you are able to show the honesty, educating them, showing them exactly what outcomes that exist, that they might fall into any one of those categories. So what you're saying is absolutely brilliant. And it's principles that I believe optometrists can be able to themselves take and implement in their practices. So that was absolutely powerful.
I see absolutely no reason why optometry can't use that digital platform and consulting basis as well. It's quite you'll quite quickly be able to see whether they, get an idea for myopia, presbyopia. Then you can talk to them. Do they do a lot of time on the computer screen about the blue filter lenses? So it's education. And next minute they're in your practice asking more about your technology. So whether it's optometry, ophthalmology, I think the digital space is here to stay. It's changed the world. And we have to jump on that train, because the practices that don't, I think we will get left behind.
For sure, yes. It is such a easy tool that was given to us in the last recent years, and I am very happy to see ophthalmologists using it to the extent that they are using it nowadays. Absolutely wonderful, both to educate patients, get patients, and as well to educate us as young ophthalmologists who really look up to you, doctors all around the world. But in that regard, there must be some red lines not to cross regarding using social media. I think this differs from a country to the other. And I wanted to ask you, Dr. Rifay, if you had any remark on that particular point.
So in Morocco, we have a law of medicine, so that forbidden the advertising medicine. So I think, but the refractive surgery is like aesthetic surgery. It needs some kind of marketing, because we are offering a service which is not treating an illness, but it is a comfort service. So we have to make the balance between them. So in my way of working, I do some videos of explanation of all the techniques of refractive surgery, showing the positive and the negative points about it. So I try to give the reality to the patients, to avoid this marketing or this commercial way to give the information. We speak about the good results, but also that there is there are some exceptions, etc. So there is another thing which is important, that people should see what happens in the OR. They don't know if it is under general anesthesia, if it needs some days in the hospital, or just. So I do some videos of lives for lasik and PRK and ICL. I put them on Facebook, on Instagram, to show the people how it really happens. Other thing, I use testimonials of patients. I think when a patient speak to other patients, it's better than the doctor, because you feel the patient speaking from his heart. And we take patients from after surgeries, and there is orthoptist, or with me, we make a video after the consent of the patient, and we do this video. It's helping a lot, because sometimes the patient who give the consent become a friend in Facebook and in Instagram with other patients, and they can share with them the experience, and it is the real experience. So what are the red lines? I think for me, the red lines is to say this surgery is 100%, high definition vision, no complications, to give some discounts, to say that I'm the best doctor and the others don't know anything. So in my way to work, I give consideration to my colleagues. I say that the surgery is done in my town, in other towns, in all, to give the consideration to all the doctors. What is a red line also? It's the bloggers. There are a lot of people that use this system of blogging, a blogger which have a huge number of followers that come to an office, and it is paid for this. I think this is very bad way to do marketing for refractives. We are doing refractives, but we are doctors. We have to follow the deontology of medicine.
Yeah, absolutely great points. And I think what you meant, because we call it bloggers in Morocco and North Africa, but I think for the rest of the continent, it's influentials. And this is something
Influentials,
that,
okay.
yeah, so there's something that's very much debated indeed, whether it is a good technique or not. I am currently living in the US and I see a lot of practices actually bringing in, you know, Hollywood stars and influentials to their practices, and they do use that for marketing. So it's probably dependent on the country as well. I'm not sure, but definitely something to consider. Thank you for the point, Dr. Yasser.
Thank you.
Dr. Joseph, what's the most difficult case you've had in practice?
Ah, gee whiz. Well, that'll probably go back to my retina days, but let's talk refractive surgery. Yeah, I've difficult, or I'd rather call it a challenging case. I've had, when I was in Ireland, I had a patient who had LASIK 10 years prior, and he was playing hurling, which is one of their national sports. And he got the back of the stick through the visor, and it actually lifted his LASIK flap. And
Wow.
he left it for 3 weeks. So when he'd come through to me, he had basically a sheet of epithelium and muck in the interface, and he had 3 massive fixed folds in the central LASIK flap and superior flap. And he had already started developing flap melt in the periphery as well. So it was 2 or 3 sessions of lifting the flap and debriding it. We used at that stage alcohol and MMC to kill as much of the epithelial cells as possible. It regrew, at which we knew it was going to happen. It was a high chance, so we went and relifted the flap. And he did actually end up getting a central perforation as well from the epithelial ingrowth. But we managed to clear his visual axis, and we then rehabbed that eye over a year. And then with the guidance at that stage of Arthur, we looked at all the MS39 topography, tomography, epithelial mapping, and we actually did a bit of it's off-label at that stage because you can't use it on the EX500. But ideally, if you're treating topography, what is topography? It's epithelium and the anterior stromal surface. So we did a transepithelial treatment to remove the epithelium at a year later, and then basically a topographic guided ablation to improve the contour of his eye, and in taking into account the refraction. And we were lucky enough not having to go back and do a fine tune on the refraction, and he did really, really well. So it was a very challenging case, but at the same time, a very satisfying case. And like Yasser says as well, there are, no refractive surgeon the dictum, you cut, you cry, is true. We try and get as close to fantastic outcomes and results, but you will always have complications. You've just got to make sure that the way you manage them is good, and that you're below the international accepted rates, or at least on par with that. And I've also had on femto technology a vertical gas breakthrough, which is also not a nice thing to see. So the important thing is you've just got to realize you can't lift it, you can't do the ablation, and you can treat the patient later. So there are certain things that put your heart in your throat and make you push a few extra beads of sweat. But at the end of the day, it's just how you manage it. But yeah, not necessarily as scary as some of the retina problems, but
definitely, which is actually the
this.
beauty of refractive surgery, all the challenges and the different ways that different surgeons actually manage each specific problem. And so in that regards, I just want to say that we've been having a wonderful conversation so far, but I am a little bit of a time freak. So we have 7 minutes to go before we end. And before we end, I would like to shoot clinical questions that our surgeons in a kind of a rapid answer manner. And the first one will be for Dr. Yasser Rifay, and that'll be, what is the minimum age at which you screen for keratoconus?
So the smallest patient, the youngest patient I done a topography, it's 2.5 years. And I found the youngest one with keratoconus, with rekeratoconus, who had 5 years old. So in every time I can do topography when when the parents or the sister or had keratoconus, so I do a screening of all the family, and if the kid can put his chin and he's stable on the topographer, I do it.
Wow, that's a really interesting point. What do you think about that, Dr. Joseph?
Yeah, so I think this is where optometry is fantastic as well, our optometric colleagues, because they often see the children. They do the screening a lot at schools. And I think more so for me is that if they are picking up a pathology, I don't have a massive keratoconic practice. So I've got a mostly aged practice. And I think it's genetics as well. And we have a much smaller base of keratoconus here in the Southern Cape. But basically, if the optometrist has an index of suspicion, it's irrelevant really what the age of that patient is. And the same with me. If I've got a family history and we know the patient is an eye rubber, which is a massive, I mean, Damien Gatinol says, and he's written papers on it about, eye rubbing, no rub, no cone.
Oh.
And often all of these patients, if you look into the family history of some form of atopic dermatitis or asthma or rhinitis or a family history of it, and they often rub eyes or sleep on a pillow. Interestingly, if you're sleeping on a pillow on the one eye, you can induce keratoconus as well with that genetic predisposition. So I agree. I think age is less relevant than the fact that are you clinically concerned that this might be a keratoconus? Yeah.
And Dr. Dillon, when do you suggest clear lens extraction in your practice for your patients?
Yeah.
Can you hear Dr. Dillon?
Question.
Can you guys hear Dr. Dillon, or is it just me?
Not just me.
Yeah.
There was just a small lag, but he's back now.
Okay.
A lag. Okay. Sorry. No, great. So I think one really interesting study was published a few years ago about chamber parameters, and especially in aqueous volume and also the angle anatomy. In those press patients which are borderline, if they have critical anterior chamber parameters, which I'm happy to share offline then later if you want, study, which was a publication that said they have about a 30% risk in their lifetime of running
I think, Imani, I think there's just a small challenge with...
If they've got experience, I would, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now
yes, we can hear you. You're back.
Am I back? I said, sorry, so intact posterior hyaloid, I'd be less inclined to go and do a lens procedure, especially in a high myope. But, if a patient is really, really driven and they're not a good lasik candidate, not a good ICL candidate, and they understand the implications of going into the eye as opposed to staying on top of the lens or on the cornea, and they're well counseled and well consented, then you can consider these patients. And in Ireland, we were doing them as under 30, some of them, where, even in the 30s and 40s. But so for me, it's more to do with what is the clinical presentation? What is your data that you're receiving? Are they good candidates for certain procedures and not for others? So it wouldn't be a go-to procedure necessarily for a majority of cases, but it's reserved a lot of the time when they're not good candidates for one of those two procedures. And especially, they might be a good candidate for laser and 40 years old, but they've got really narrow angles and threatened angles. And then I'd rather say, listen, it's in your best interest to rather do a lensectomy, especially the hyperopes, with the short axial lengths.
Yes, with the highest that this comes with.
On that, sorry about that, Imani. On that, Dr. Dillon, Rihanna Zinn from Paul in South Africa, she wrote, yes, how easy do you redo a procedure? The patient of a -18 myo pre-procedure in 1999 with anterior chamber CL. He's presbyopic and some residual minus an astigmatic prescription. So
So what was the what treatment was done for the minus 18? Sorry, initially. What was the first procedure done for the minus 18?
I think she's busy typing. So that's the one question. So let's just wait and see what she says.
Okay. So from an FDA perspective, on our platforms, we don't treat a spherical equivalent of minus 12 or more on the EX500 platform. So I would never consider doing a minus 18. A minus 18 myope it's usually got a good anterior chamber depth, and they are pretty good candidates then for ICL surgery. I'd be more inclined to go that route and to start fiddling with the lens, the clear lens, because of their high risk for retinal pathology and post-operative potential for retinal detachment. But I'd like to know what so anterior chamber lens at minus 18. So what is so a little bit of residual minus and astigmatism? Oh, absolutely. So if you've got normal topography, tomography, epithelial mapping, then that last little bit of myopic astigmatism you can correct with LASIK or with surface treatment. It depends on what your tomography and epithelial mapping looks like. But absolutely, with an anterior chamber lens, you can still put a suction ring on with a femtoseconds. A lot of the modern day femtos have far less suction than the old keratomes. So you're not going to be disturbing that anterior chamber lens. I wouldn't be bothered about the endothelium if this was done in 1999. It would remain stable. So on the surface of the eye or LASIK is highly likely your answer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joseph. I think we're getting so many interesting questions, but just to be on time, I think the Eyefrica Media Facebook group will be a great place to discuss all these questions. So for those of you who have not had their questions answered, we're sorry about that, but we welcome all of you to join the group.
No, don't cut us. I disagree with you. There's no way we can cut this.
Well, time is time, and we don't want to take much more of our guests' time.
Let's get Dr. Rifay to answer this last question then. What are the preventative measures we should advocate for our patients to prevent them from getting to high levels of myopia or keratoconus, Dr. Rifay?
What are
the preventative measures we should advocate for our patients to prevent them from getting to high levels of myopia or keratoconus? That's a question from Dr. Ogingo in Kenya.
So it is different. The high myopia is different from keratoconus. From keratoconus, we should screen people when there are a family history with keratoconus, and we should avoid to rub the eye and sleep on a pillow. For high myopia, I think there are other ways is to see to look for far seeing at least 2 hours a day, and to avoid tablets and phones. Use the low concentrated atropine, and use orthokeratology. I think this is the 3 ways to avoid developing of high myopia.
Well, thank you for the input, but I'm still going to be the time freak because I do have a lot of respect to all of your times. Thank you so much, very, very much for accepting the invitation. We are very excited to create this new hub, this new community of eye care professionals in Africa, which is something I am very, very much proud of. Thank you to Obi and Dr. Daryl for involving me on this. Thank you very much, Dr. Dylan, for joining us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Rifay, for joining us today. I'll let you guys finish with whatever you would like to add.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Obi. Thanks, Yasser.
Thank you very much. We'll make the recording. We'll put the recording up on our website, and as well as our YouTube channel, as well as all the social media platforms for Eyefrica Media. If you're not connected with Eyefrica Media, make sure to connect with Eyefrica Media right now, because Eyefrica Media is not for Dr. Imani Tarif, Dr. Daryl, or myself. It's for all of us who are in Africa as eye care professionals. So let's grow the profession and work together as best as we can, because together we can take this profession to greater heights. So cheers, everyone.
I second that. Can you all do like this so I can take a screenshot? I love selfies. There you go. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, Cheerio.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.